Raphael stood frozen at the doorway, his heart pounding louder than the rain outside. What he saw didn't make sense. His son, who hadn't smiled in 2 years, was laughing. Laughing so hard his small hands trembled on the wheels of his chair. And in front of him, the new maid was dancing barefoot across the marble floor, singing off-key, her laughter echoing through the house that had forgotten what joy sounded like. For a second, Raphael forgot to breathe. A billionaire, a broken child, and a maid who just rewrote what hope looked like. For 2 years, Raphael's mansion had been silent. The laughter that once bounced off its glass walls was buried the night his wife, Amanda, died in that storm. Since then, every chandelier sparkled too brightly, every corridor echoed too long. The house was rich in gold, but poor in life. Enzo, his only son, lived inside a world of stillness. His wheelchair became his shadow, his silence, an invisible wall no one could climb. Therapists came and went. Toys piled up untouched. Doctors called it trauma. Raphael called it punishment. He blamed himself for every tear his son didn't cry, for every word he didn't speak. Then that morning, everything changed. Raphael had returned early from a meeting, exhausted and bitter, ready to sink into another quiet afternoon. But when he opened the door, the air inside felt different, warmer. He followed the sound of music, soft, playful, impossibly alive. And there she was, the new maid, Clara. Young, clumsy, and completely unaware that her boss stood behind her. She was spinning in the living room, holding a mop like a dance partner, her voice cracking on every lyric. And in front of her, Enzo, his tiny hands clapping out of rhythm, eyes shining like sunlight through glass. Raphael froze, his throat tightened. He hadn't seen that expression on his son's face since Amanda's funeral. He wanted to speak, to say anything, but his words betrayed him. A tear slid down before he could stop it. The keys fell from his hand with a loud clang. The moment shattered like thin glass. Clara gasped, turned around, and stopped the music so quickly it left an awkward silence behind. I'm sorry, sir, she stammered, gripping the mop like a shield. I was just trying to make him smile. He looked so sad. Raphael blinked hard, trying to steady his voice. You work here? Yes, sir. The agency sent me this morning. I didn't mean to. He looked at Enzo. The light was already fading from the boy's face, replaced by that same empty stare. It broke Raphael in half. Don't apologize, he said quietly. Just be careful. He's fragile. Clara nodded, but her eyes said something different. She didn't see fragility. She saw a child who just needed someone to remember how to play. When Raphael turned away, he didn't realize that something long dead inside him had just started to move again. The next morning, Raphael told himself he'd imagined it. The music, the laughter. Maybe his mind had played a cruel trick. But when he passed by the garden window, he froze again. Clara was there, kneeling in the grass, scrubbing the stone tiles, humming softly. And Enzo was on the porch watching her. Not staring blankly this time, watching. His head tilted, eyes tracking her every move. Raphael stayed hidden, afraid that if he moved, the magic would vanish again. Then he heard Clara speak. You know what these flowers told me today? She said, glancing toward the boy with a grin. They said the sun is too bossy, always shining, always bragging. But the daisies, oh, they just giggle and dance anyway. Her voice changed with each sentence. Playful, dramatic, alive. Enzo blinked. Slowly, his lips curved into something close to a smile. Clara made her hands into puppets, pretending to argue as the flowers. One had a grumpy tone. The other whispered shyly. Raphael leaned against the window frame, something tight in his chest loosening for the first time in years. When was the last time he'd tried to make his son laugh? The thought burned. Later that day, Clara came inside to clean the living room. Raphael pretended to read, though he hadn't turned a page in 10 minutes. Sir, she said softly, can I make Enzo some lunch? He barely touched his breakfast. Raphael frowned. He doesn't eat much. I can try something different, she said, her eyes bright with hope. Maybe animal-shaped sandwiches? Kids like things that smile back. He wanted to tell her not to bother, but something in her tone stopped him. An hour later, Clara brought a tray to the table. The sandwiches were cut into butterflies, their wings made of lettuce and tiny cherry tomatoes. Look, Enzo, she said. The butterflies came for lunch. They're starving for your smile. Raphael watched from the corner of the room, pretending to check his phone. Enzo stared at the plate for a long moment, then picked up one butterfly sandwich and took a tiny bite. It was nothing, just one bite. But for Raphael, it felt like witnessing a miracle. Clara clapped softly. You did it. You fed the butterflies. They said you're their new hero. Raphael felt his throat tighten again. That small, fragile moment, a child eating, a maid smiling, carried more warmth than any luxury money had ever bought him. As Clara left that afternoon, she knelt beside Enzo's wheelchair. Tomorrow we play again. Okay? The butterflies might visit you in your dreams tonight. Enzo didn't speak, but he nodded. Clear, gentle nod. Raphael stood by the door, silent. For the first time in years, the silence in his house didn't feel heavy. Felt hopeful. That night, he sat alone in his study, staring at Amanda's photo. If only you could see him now, he whispered. He laughed today. Outside, the wind moved through the trees, and for a fleeting second, he thought he heard a whisper, soft, tender, like Amanda's voice saying, "Then don't let it stop." Raphael wiped a tear, made a quiet promise to himself, and turned off the light. Tomorrow he would watch again, not from behind the glass but beside his son. The next few days turned into something Raphael hadn't expected, a routine that felt almost sacred. Every morning, Clara would arrive with her messy bun, her cheerful humming, and that quiet confidence that didn't ask for permission to bring light into the house. She didn't treat Enzo like a patient or a fragile creature. She treated him like a boy who deserved adventure. The hallway is a jungle today, she'd whisper conspiratorially, pushing his wheelchair slowly. We must move carefully. The lions are sleeping. Enzo giggled, the sound so pure it startled Raphael the first time he heard it. Sometimes Clara made mistakes. Knocked over vases, dropped her mop, forgot where she'd left her gloves. But somehow, Enzo always found her clumsiness hilarious. The boy who hadn't laughed in 2 years now giggled every few minutes. Raphael started timing those moments, as if afraid they'd disappear. At first, he watched from afar, telling himself he was just making sure nothing went wrong. But one afternoon, he found himself standing in the doorway, smiling without realizing it. Clara noticed him. Oh, sorry, sir. We're just pretending to fly. Fly? Raphael raised an eyebrow. Yeah. Enzo's chair isn't just a chair. It's an airplane. Destination, happiness. Enzo spread his arms wide, mimicking the sound of a plane. Whoosh! Raphael's heart cracked open in the best possible way. That evening, when Clara packed her things to leave, Raphael stopped her. You've done more for him in a week than any doctor in 2 years, he said quietly. Clara smiled, a little embarrassed. I didn't do much, sir. He just needed someone to believe he could still smile. But when she left, Raphael couldn't shake the thought that maybe he had been the one who'd stopped believing first. The days grew brighter. Enzo's laughter echoed through rooms that had long forgotten how sound felt. Even the maids whispered about it. The mansion seemed alive again. Then one afternoon, while Raphael was in his office, he heard music, soft, playful, coming from the living room. Curious, he followed it. What he saw made his breath hitch. Clara was dancing barefoot again, twirling to the rhythm of a children's song, while Enzo clapped along from his wheelchair. She moved with pure joy, unpolished, unafraid, like someone who'd found magic in a world that had none. For a second, Raphael felt something unfamiliar stirring, something that scared him. Gratitude, admiration, maybe even the beginning of affection. He leaned against the doorframe, unnoticed. The sunlight spilled over both of them, the broken boy and the woman who refused to see his brokenness. Then, as if the universe wanted to remind him of his past. His eyes landed on the framed photo of Amanda on the piano. The smile, the warmth, everything he'd lost. Guilt stabbed him. He turned to leave, but the sound of Enzo's voice stopped him cold. "Ma!" It was faint, cracked, but real. Clara froze. Raphael's heart nearly stopped. Enzo tried again, his lips trembling. "Ma!" Clara knelt beside him, eyes wide with tears. "It's okay, sweetie. You can say it. Ma, ma." The word broke free like sunlight through clouds. Raphael stumbled forward, unable to breathe. His son had spoken for the first time in 2 years. Clara looked up at him, smiling through tears. "He did it, sir. He's talking again." But Raphael couldn't move. He just dropped to his knees beside Enzo and pulled him into his arms, sobbing silently. Clara looked away to give them space, but her hands trembled. She hadn't just helped a boy speak again. She'd reminded a father what love sounded like. As the sun dipped beyond the window, Raphael whispered to himself, "Amanda," he said your name, and for the first time since she died, he didn't feel alone in that house anymore. For weeks, it felt like a miracle unfolding piece by piece. Enzo spoke more every day. Small words, broken syllables, but each one a triumph. His laughter filled the mansion, and Raphael found himself waking up early just to hear it. Even the air smelled different, like fresh bread and sunlight instead of disinfectant and grief. Clara had become part of their rhythm, part of their healing. She sang while cleaning, told stories during lunch, and somehow turned every chore into a celebration. Raphael, who once walked through life like a ghost, began to feel human again. But peace has a way of making some people nervous. One Friday morning, as Raphael was about to leave for a meeting, he noticed a car parked outside the gate. Black, unfamiliar, windows tinted. The driver sat motionless, pretending to read a newspaper. When Raphael looked twice, the man lowered it just enough to reveal cold eyes staring back. A chill ran through him. He ignored it at first. Later that day, Clara mentioned something strange. "Sir, someone's been calling the house," she said quietly. "When I answer, they hang up." Raphael frowned. "Probably sales calls." "Maybe," she said, but her tone said otherwise. That evening, as the sun set, Clara prepared dinner while Enzo colored on the kitchen table. Raphael entered quietly, watching them. The way she leaned down to compliment every drawing. The way the boy's face glowed with pride. It almost felt like a family, until the doorbell rang. Standing outside was a woman, tall, elegant, with cold, practiced beauty. Her blonde hair tied perfectly, her smile as sharp as glass. "Good evening," she said, her voice smooth. "I'm Veronica, Amanda's sister." Raphael froze. He hadn't seen her since the funeral. "Veronica? You're back." "I was abroad," she said lightly, eyes darting past him into the house. "But when I heard about Enzo's recovery, I had to see him." Something about her tone made the hairs on Clara's arms rise. Veronica stepped inside without waiting for permission. The moment Enzo saw her, his smile vanished. His little hands gripped the sides of his wheelchair until his knuckles turned white. "Sweetheart," Veronica cooed, kneeling down. "Don't you remember me? It's Aunt Veronica." Enzo whimpered, shaking his head violently. "Veronica, maybe it's too soon," Raphael said softly. "He's still sensitive." "Nonsense," she replied. "Family should never be strangers." Her perfume filled the room. Sweet, suffocating, artificial. Clara felt it stick to her skin like poison. For the rest of the evening, Enzo refused to eat or speak. Clara tried to comfort him, but every time Veronica appeared, he froze like a statue. Raphael noticed it, but he didn't know what to make of it. Later, when he walked Veronica to the door, she smiled sweetly. "She's quite involved, isn't she?" "Who?" "The maid," Veronica said, her tone dripping with condescension. "You let her play mommy now?" Raphael stiffened. "She's helping my son heal." "Of course," Veronica purred. "Just remember, sometimes help comes with a price." Over the next week, Tension crept into every corner of the house. Veronica started visiting more often, always unannounced, always smiling too much. She brought gifts for Enzo, but he never touched them. She made comments that felt harmless on the surface but carried sharp edges underneath. "She's young," she told Raphael one night while sipping wine. "And pretty. It's natural she'd get attached. But you should be careful, dear brother-in-law. Lonely people do strange things for affection." Raphael didn't answer, but her words planted tiny, poisonous seeds of doubt. Clara noticed the change almost immediately. Raphael grew distant, quieter. He no longer lingered to watch her stories with Enzo. The warmth that had slowly bloomed between them began to fade under the shadow of Veronica's presence. One afternoon, while dusting Raphael's office, Clara overheard voices. Veronica's sharp and clear, Raphael's uncertain. "I just think you should reconsider how close she is to Enzo," Veronica said. "He's vulnerable, impressionable. What happens if she leaves? He'll collapse again." "She's not leaving," Raphael said. "She's good for him. Or maybe she's good for you," Veronica murmured. "You've been lonely a long time, haven't you?" Clara's breath caught. Her hands trembled so hard she almost dropped the duster. She quietly backed away before they could notice. That night, she packed her things early, her heart heavy. When she reached the door, Enzo wheeled himself toward her. "You come tomorrow?" he asked softly. Clara knelt down, brushing his hair aside. "Of course, my prince. I'll always come back." But as she walked out into the evening, a strange unease followed her. Someone was watching from the upstairs window, a silhouette she didn't recognize. And somewhere deep inside her chest, a whisper warned, "The light you brought into this house just woke up its darkest shadows." The storm that night rolled in without warning. Thunder rattled the windows, rain streaking down the glass like tears. Inside, Raphael sat in his study, staring at the photo of Amanda. The flicker of the fireplace made her smile seem alive again. Veronica's words echoed in his mind. "She's young. She's dangerous. She wants something from you." He didn't want to believe them, but the seed of doubt had already taken root. He rubbed his temples, exhausted. Then, through the sound of rain, he heard it, a muffled cry, a child's. Raphael bolted upright. "Enzo?" No answer. Only another choked sound. From upstairs. He raced toward the hallway, his footsteps pounding against marble. At the top of the stairs, he froze. Veronica stood outside Enzo's room, one hand on the door handle. Her smile was gone. "What are you doing?" he demanded. She turned slowly. "He had a nightmare. I'm helping." "Helping?" Raphael stepped closer. "He's terrified of you." Veronica's eyes flickered with something dark. "Terrified because of her," she snapped. That made fills his head with nonsense. "Fairies, monsters. Stories," Raphael said sharply. "Stories that make him laugh." Lightning flashed through the window, illuminating Veronica's face. And for a split second, Raphael saw it. Not grief, not concern, but resentment. Then Enzo's voice cut through the thunder. "Papa!" Raphael pushed past her and rushed into the room. Enzo was shaking, pointing at the window. "She said bad mama." Raphael turned. "What did you say to him?" "I didn't." "Enough," he growled. "Leave." For the first time, Veronica's composure cracked. "You're choosing her side? Over your own family." "My family is in that chair," he said, pointing to Enzo. "And the woman who made him smile again. She's more family than you'll ever be." Downstairs, Clara was drying dishes when she heard the shouting. Then a crash, glass shattering. She ran toward the stairs just as Veronica stormed down, eyes wild, mascara streaking. "You think you can replace my sister?" she hissed. "You think you belong here?" Clara backed up. "Please calm down." Enzo's scared. Veronica stepped closer, trembling with rage. "You don't understand, do you? I was supposed to have this life. Raphael, the house, everything. Amanda took it, and now you. You're hurting them," Clara said, voice shaking. "You're doing exactly what you hated her for." For a heartbeat, Veronica faltered. Then she grabbed a vase and hurled it across the room. It smashed against the wall. Enzo screamed from upstairs. That sound, raw and terrified, broke something inside Raphael. He came running, fury written across his face. "Get out of my house." Veronica's lip trembled. "You think you know everything, Raphael? Ask your son what really happened the night of the accident." The words hit like lightning. "What are you talking about?" he asked. Veronica's voice turned sharp, desperate. "She wasn't driving alone. I was there. I tried to stop her. She wanted to leave you." Raphael's blood ran cold. "You were in the car? She said she'd take Enzo and disappear. I just wanted to talk, but she grabbed the wheel." "You killed her," Raphael whispered. "It was an accident," she screamed. "You were mine first. She took everything." Raphael stepped forward, face pale with shock. "You let me blame myself for 2 years. Because you deserve to suffer." Veronica spat, voice trembling. "You loved her more than you ever loved me." In that moment, the illusion shattered completely. The woman who had hidden behind perfume and sympathy was gone. Only bitterness remained. Clara stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. Enzo was at the top of the stairs, eyes wide with terror. "She hurt Mama," he whispered. Veronica turned, startled. "You don't know what you saw, Enzo." But the boy's small voice rose, trembling but sure. "You pulled wheel." "I saw." Raphael's world tilted. Every sleepless night, every memory of that storm, all the guilt he carried, collapsed under the weight of his son's truth. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Raphael stepped forward slowly, his voice steady. "It's over, Veronica." Sirens wailed in the distance. Clara had already called the police. When the officers arrived, Veronica didn't resist. She just stared at Raphael with hollow eyes. "You'll miss me when she leaves you too." Raphael didn't answer. He simply took Enzo into his arms and held him tight. Weeks passed before the house felt safe again. Veronica's confession made headlines, but Raphael shut out the noise. His only focus was Enzo, the boy who had found his voice again when the truth demanded to be heard. Every morning, Clara still came humming through the door. She cleaned, she cooked, she danced, but now Raphael joined her. Sometimes they'd push Enzo's wheelchair through the garden, while he told stories about the brave airplane pilot who never gave up. And on quiet nights, when the house was filled with the smell of warm soup and laughter, Raphael would catch himself looking at Clara. Not with guilt this time, but with gratitude. One afternoon, Enzo rolled up beside him and whispered, "Papa, she makes you smile." Raphael blinked, startled. "Does she?" Enzo grinned. "Mama happy." "I know." That evening, Raphael found Clara in the kitchen, hair falling out of her bun, cheeks flushed from the stove. He took a deep breath. "You saved us," he said softly. Clara laughed nervously. "I didn't do much." "You brought my son back to life," he said. "You brought me back." She looked up, eyes shining. "Maybe we both needed saving." Outside, the storm had passed. The sky was clear, glowing with the last pink light of sunset. Enzo wheeled himself toward them, holding a drawing, a stick-figure family. A man, a woman, and a boy in a wheelchair. Above them, in messy crayon letters, it said, "Home." Clara knelt beside him. "Is this us?" Enzo nodded proudly. "Family." Raphael felt tears sting his eyes. He placed his hand on Clara's shoulder, the other on his son's. For the first time in years, the mansion didn't echo with loneliness. It breathed, it laughed, it loved. And somewhere, beneath that same sky, Amanda's memory finally rested. Because love, in the end, had found its way home again.